The spirit world rise. I have seen in Abilene the spirit
So today, we're going to talk about plot and character, but we're going to skip the plot part and just talk about character. I'm a believer in storytelling. As long as you have a good character, the plot will naturally work itself out. So, because you can't have character without plot, and you can't have plot without character. So what makes a good character, according to Aristotle's Poetics? We're going way back to 360 AD or more. He was born in 346 AD. No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. He was born in 346 BC. So we're going back before Christ, 300 in maybe like, let's say 50 years, 350 years before Christ. Aristotle was writing Poetics. He was working with Plato. He came up with this idea of what makes a play. So you got to have plot, you got to have character as part of it. There's a lot of things you have to have. You even have to have a spectacle. There's a lot of stuff though. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, we got to figure out character, right? Because that's what the actors focus on, at least thespians. So what makes them likable? See, I've got two different color socks right here. And what's goodness, right? It's got to be good. That's what Hemingway talked about. Hemingway wrote down that he always focused on goodness of things, good things, and didn't bring in the negative, because the negative doesn't really show up. It doesn't compute very well. Even Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver was still good, right? So you got to have a good character, and what makes someone good, right? Then likable, right? These are New Balance shoes. I like them because they used to be made in a foreign country called Switzerland or something like that. Now they make them in America. What about high status, reputation? That's the hard part. That's whenever you got like 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers or 50,000 subscribers, or you've got like 1 million subscribers. Then you have the reputation, right? The character has to be Robert De Niro, right? Because everybody knows Robert De Niro. But he played Travis Bickle, but he was still Robert De Niro. He had a reputation. So he became a character. Now, consistency. Consistency probably means that the character talks about the same things. Look at Adam the Woo. He talks about tacos. He talks about Alfred Hitchcock. He always talks about the same things. Walt Disney World. He keeps consistent as a character. He doesn't just change and start becoming like a banker. Like all of a sudden he starts working at a bank. But even if he did work at a bank, he'd still talk about Walt Disney World and tacos and Alfred Hitchcock and maybe In-N-Out Burgers or something like that, right? So the character is consistent. Now, you could say perfect, and that's crossed out because Plato felt that life was perfect. So theater was just a reputation of life, of reputation. And that's actually not said correctly. Plato said that life was perfect, and theater was a representation right? What's good about me is I misspeak sometimes, but then I correct myself and I get it right. So it's a representation of a representation. So he didn't have anything good to say about art. He said life was good enough. It was perfect enough. But then there's a reputation, okay? A representation. A representation of a representation. So what Plato was saying was that life is perfect, but theater is just a representation. So cinema and film is a representation of life, but it's a representation of a representation. Because Plato said that life was a representation of something that was already perfect. That life itself was already a representation of something. So theater was a representation of a representation. Hence, Antonian Artaud's The Theater of the Double. There was something else there. It was representing a representation. It's more than just representation. They say it's a mirror to life. It's more than that. It's hard to describe because Plato was a philosopher. But what Plato was talking about was that there was something which was life, which was perfect, and it was a representation of something. And theater was a representation of representation. It's more than what you think. It's like looking in two mirrors, not just one. So is cinema, we're looking in three mirrors? And welcome to the Please Subscribe Show. I was reading some stuff off YouTube. Today we're going to drop off food at your doorstep eventually, and it's raining.
Unfortunately, as with many early texts,
1.7 miles.
So Plato felt that life was a representation, and that theater was a representation of a representation. So is cinema a representation of a representation of a representation? I don't know, ask Plato, Kitty. He didn't have anything good to say about art. But Aristotle did with Poetics, or known as Poetics. And you had to have the plot as well as the character. And don't forget about the spectacle and all the stuff in between. Music, goodness, and narrative. Aristotle's argument. There was a difference between those. So there was a difference between the music of a play. There was a difference between the goodness of the characters. And there was a difference between the narrative. And usually we get that with this, the narrative. That's why I was real quiet after that moment. So we had the catharsis and something like the hamartia or something. But the hamartia was the error. So it was the error, E-R-R, or error. And the catharsis was the build-up emotion. So every play, he felt, should have a build-up to a moment where it becomes cathartic. And then he thought that there is an error, which is the hamartia. You know how to say it. So the error in Aristotle's definition was the wrongdoing. It could be the hunchback in Richard III. And when I mean the hunchback, I mean the hunchback in Richard III. What caused him to be this error, this thing of disgust, which led to a chain reaction of things. He got spit on, eventually lost his kingdom, and looked for a horse. There's wrongdoing. So that's part of what Aristotle noticed when he watched a play, that there was something wrong immediately. Now, when Plato was talking about a representation of a representation, which I mentioned reputation, which was incorrect, but a representation of a representation, what he was saying is that you saw life, so it represented something. But when you went to the theater, you were seeing a representation of a representation. Plato was very smart. Most people don't think that way. And most people won't be able to understand this. But what it means is that you are seeing something that you've already seen before. So when you go and you see life, you're reminded of something every day in life. So let's go, you walk down a trail. You're walking down a trail, blah, 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 blah. You see an old oak tree. Well, that old oak tree reminds you of something. It represents something. When you go to the theater and you sit down and you watch the theater and you see that old oak tree, which you've already seen in real life, you're not seeing a representation. You're seeing a representation of a representation. You're seeing something that represents something that represents something. So it's theater of the double, which brings us to Antonian R2. Or Antonian R12 for the English majors.
Yes, we're home.
So you're looking at one of the only copies of Theater and its Double. Right here. Be careful, Kitty. I know you're excited. But I have it. You can no longer buy this book. It's off print. And this is one of the only copies. As you can see. So this book you can no longer buy. It's out of print. It's The Theater and Its Double by Antonian Artaud. And if you look at it, it's no commentary or really anything. Let's put it over here. As it opens, that was written by Antonian R2. So this puppy's almost priceless. I can't get it anywhere. It belongs in my library under my theater analysis, which is in direction. And we'll put it probably right next to Peter Brook, which is known as the empty space, right next to the open door and the shifting point. All right, looks like we do have more rain than I thought. So we were going to drop food at your doorstep for Food for Friends, but I don't know for sure. What do you think? Exactly. So we'll have to see. And looks like it's going to dry up here around 2 p.m. And then it's right now 12:59 p.m. So it may dry up. They're launching a new mission around 2 p.m. We're dropping food off at your doorstep. Yeah, it's not close to Montgomery at all, Snickles. You just said it was down the street from Montgomery. That's okay.
West.
That'll
Off
get us.
7th
That'll
Street.
get us there. It is off of West 7th. This is where some of the stuff I want to.
Well, I gave you the address 3 times. If you go back and watch the videos,
Peter Miller.
should figure out how to do my own Google Maps. Well, I want to take exit 12C just like my thumb said, but no, you had to take 12A.
Doesn't look like the light's functioning, or if it's operational. But we'll have to see.
Turn left onto West 7th Street.
Well, the lady said to turn left.
In 1,000 feet, turn left onto Harold Street.
All right, so we know after Harold, there's another street right here. We gotta know what that street is. That's Shakespeare in the Park right over there.
You missed it. It was State
Right
Street.
there.
Turn left onto Harold Street, then turn left onto West 6th Street.
No, the
That's
address
Shakespeare in
was
the
State
Park,
Street.
right by that Nazi symbol. Okay.
Turn left onto West 6th Street, then
This
your
is where it's
destination
at
will be
right
on the
here.
right.
And that's Montgomery Plaza. You're gonna have to run in there. He got your spot.
There's spots over
Is
there.
that person selfish? Everybody's selfish. All right, they're from Alabama. There's Tony and guy right there. He's in here cutting some grown out like no young. All right, now run over there. All right, 1949, following 11 inches of rain, 10 people lost their lives in 1949, and it was the most deadly flood that ever happened in Fort Worth. And the Montgomery Plaza was affected. People say it was up to the 2nd floor. The flooding was up to the 2nd floor in certain areas of the building. Don't know how that happened, but that's what they say. And 11 people lost their lives. This happened in 1949, the flooding. So the flooding went over 11 inches. 10 people lost their lives. This is the Montgomery Plaza building in Fort Worth. And man, it was a lot of rain. And it happened in 1949. And 11 people or 10 people were killed, and it did $11 million worth of damage. And this building right here, Montgomery Plaza, is the building that was affected in 1949. And that's Montgomery Plaza. They still have a sign out front, but it's been repurposed. Kind of see the building. 1949 was one of the most deadly floodings, or it was the deadly flooding. They call it very deadly flooding of Fort Worth. Over 11 inches of rain. Tree River flooded, and that's a lot of rain. 11 inches of rain is a lot of rain. And you're looking at it right here. That's Montgomery Plaza. How much is Payway anyway?
How much is what?
Payway?
Too expensive?
Yeah, all of this plaza was pretty much here. I think it was flooded up to the second floor. They got photographs. That's how we know it really happened. They actually have photography of the flooding.
Can't go steal their sauce.
And that's Montgomery Plaza right there. They do have Lancaster luxury apartments that were recently opened, and this is right off West 7th and Fort Worth. And this is part of Montgomery Plaza now, which is a very big plaza. Back in 1949, it wasn't that big, but it did have several floors. So it was like 6, 7, 8, 9, I don't know, baker's dozen. I don't know how many floors it had. But it was a larger building, and it did flood up to, I think, the second floor or something. It killed a total of 10 people. The flooding was horrible. And they called it Deadly Flood. That's the nickname of it, the Deadly Flood in Fort Worth.
Can you stop by?
There's a lot of
real
rain.
quick?
Yeah, just give me a second. So the reason why the Montgomery Plaza actually, almost drowned was because it's right next to the Trinity River. And there's the sign right there. Not too far from the Trinity River, really almost rock throwing distance. It's pretty far. From downtown Fort Worth. Well, it's about not even maybe about a few hundred yards from downtown Fort Worth, but it's really close to the Trinity River. It's just right next door to the Trinity River. All right, and this is going into Montgomery Plaza. A lot of this has been repurposed, so it's not the same as it used to be, but it's pretty similar. You can see it right here. A lot of it looked the same back in the 40s. It happened in 1949. Trying to go through old articles. I got a photo of the building and the flooding. It looks similar, but I'm going through some old photos to see if I can find the exact date of the flooding. We may go to Starbucks and smell their coffee. Ooh, they have a red door escape room. Have you been there? I wonder what that means. Trust us, it's fun, especially during the time of COVID. Now this is also Starbucks right here, which is in Montgomery. Montgomery Plaza. And you're looking at it during the rain time. Now they just repurposed Montgomery Plaza, so it's got a lot of stuff, and it's Target, Super Target's right behind it. And there's a lot of the stuff that they have. Yeah, it flooded in 1949. They got the Lash Lounge. It'd be cool if they had some of the old businesses that were there at the time. They're from Florida. And there's AT&T too, if you're a big AT&T fan. A few people running for office. Okay, I'm going the wrong way. You got me, you got me, you got me. Okay, he's gonna let me in, cool. All right, what a nice citizen. Go around this way.
Hi there. Where is your location, please?
See a lot of it right here.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you so much. Thank you. I thought this was the one. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. That's right.
Pretty big building. Even today, it's still a big building. And I'll show you some photos, maybe if I remember. I'll show you photos of what it looked like back in 1949.
Oh yeah, she's the manager, so she gets a very good review. Yay!
So that's the review?
Yes. All right, gotta take very good care of these.
Okay. Linda recently lost her glasses.
4 and then a 5. Also, I think that's the one that I have right now on my eye. That I just opened up. She said the right eye's gonna be off a little bit.
Oh, man. You really don't see raincoats anymore. You know, raincoats. I remember when I was a kid, I used to have one. I've had a pea coat, which is pretty good for rain. But you don't really see raincoats anymore. Those old school yellow raincoats. What are you in the mood for? Now there is a T to go.
Quiet time?
Yeah, there's Montgomery again. We're in Montgomery Plaza right now.
I'm trying to leave a review, but now I gotta remember my password to get into my Google.
Yeah, don't talk about that out loud. I like their overpass bridges because they have apartments. So there's bridges that connect the two buildings. You can get from one apartment building to another. Overhang bridge. I wonder what Gloria's is. Yeah, I wonder if they do like chips and salsa.
I don't know.
You can get like chips and salsa. You used to go in those Mexican restaurants and just sit down and get chips and salsa.
And tap the sign and
Chips and salsa. Chips and salsa.